everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I share two books that we love and we think you should read. When, Brad?
Right now, reporting for duty with my line, read them right now. That's the answer.
That's right, right this second. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Part of my internal dialogue when we kick things off is like, can I get Jenn to flinch at my antics in the beginning? So today you were like, you were a tough one, Jenn. Apparently I wasn't random enough.
No, I have developed, like, I am immune to the Gustafson antics, right?
Oh, right. It's so good to see you. My goodness, so much good book stuff to talk about, which brings us together. But
well, I can't wait to hear it.
Some of them are stories for another day because I have recommendations upon recommendations that partly go back to your influence in my life, Jenn.
Well, listen, right back at you. I didn't do it, spoiler alert, but I was thinking today, I wonder if I could get away with recommending 3 books today instead of just one. I was thinking the same thing, but I'm not doing
That's
that.
awesome.
I had the same sort of thought. I had so many I wanted to share and only a limited amount of time. So I guess those are good problems to have though, right?
That's amazing. Yes. But the good news is for people, that means what we're bringing you today is like the best in the publishing world, or at least that we have had our eyes and hands on.
Well, with that being said, don't keep us in suspense anymore. What do you got to share today?
All right. So quick story related to the book I'm about to read. I was presenting in Kentucky this past week and brought a bunch of books. Well, technically speaking, the books were there waiting for me. So when I crack open this box and I'm, rifling through and taking inventory, one of the books jumped out at me. I'm like, oh my gosh. And this is like confession now. I'm like, I can't use this for presenting. I need this book in my life. So, and my kids would love it. So, I gravitated towards the book and adopted it. And then sometimes when I present or travel, I'll bring my kids each a book home. And so that was the book I also wanted to give my son, which created problems because he thought when I gave it to him that he could actually have it. But I'm like, well, first I need to read it, which was kind of late, at least in his eyes, wasn't quite right. But anyway, I had to read the thing. And he did let me. He's like, can you have it done by, I forget what he said, bedtime?
I love these negotiations. I love it.
Yeah, anyway, we came to an agreement.
But I have to read it first. Okay, Dad, but you need it done by this schedule. Yeah. I love it. It's like these back and forth. I love it.
Yeah. And he ended up being cool with it. But one of the reasons why I was so excited by this book is Gary Paulsent. I think he wrote Hatchet, if I'm remembering this right. Mm-hmm. So in 5th grade, I remember Hatchet and really loved it. So I see this book, basically kind of like written very recently, actually, and Gary passed away this year. But before, so the book was published. And that's why I'm like, oh my gosh, I kind of wanted to relive that experience, but with a new book. It just felt so meaningful on lots of levels.
Sure.
And you also know why I can't hold the book right now. It's because my son has his book that's technically his.
I love it.
But here, this is the book that created all these ripples in my reading life and family. It's from, sorry, I had to use an Instagram post.
That's all right.
Northwind by Gary Paulsent. You got that?
Yeah, got it.
And it is the story. It's a story of a young boy who initially, it feels like he almost was enslaved, poorly treated, so he's on these ships and it feels like it's in Viking land, kind of historical Iceland or kind of in the Arctic region, and mistreated to the point where like he's to eat and drink, he's like wringing out rags to get the fish oil and the fish juice. Just horrible life and not treated well. But there is one person in his life who he just has fond memories of, and I don't think the person necessarily adopted him, but he treated him well and kind of mentored him. And this is towards the beginning of the book, so I'm not really giving anything away. But the two of them, so they're almost like family. They have a quick exodus or departure because there's a plague and an illness, and this older person, this mentor basically says, you got to go because there's a plague that's happening in the land. And he sends the boy with another boy out I think in a canoe. I'm not sure. I should probably know that. And that's kind of where the rest of the story takes place. And it's written really, I don't want to say poetically, but it's a non-traditional sentence structure where parts of it seem very normal, parts of it are longer streams of thinking, as maybe can happen when you're alone. My son, as he started reading it, he can be very literal. He's like, Dad, one of the sentences was 43 words long. What is this book? But that's like some of them are. So I don't know. I probably was all over the place with that. Let me just say, living on the water is different than living in a forest. So Hatchet is inherently different than Northwind, but I fell in love with this book, and I had already started it on the airplane when I was traveling. But when my son that evening said, Dad, you got to have it done before bedtime, I was actually like, I can do that. I can have that done, because I was just flowing through it. So for all those reasons, it really, really, really is incredible. And it's really neat how a book with kind of sort of one main character, which is kind of how that one turned out, can be so moving. And I just didn't expect myself getting head over heels into it like I did. I would say for all those reasons and more, you should read Northwind by Gary Paulsent right now, Jen.
That's, Gary Paulsent wrote like 100 books or so. I mean, probably not quite that many, but many, many books during his lifetime, spanning many, many decades. He's one of those authors that I think it's a gift for a lot of kids who read Gary Paulsent when they were young to be able to then share not only the books they loved by Gary Paulsent as a kid with their own children, but new ones. Like Gary just kept on writing and writing and writing. I'm not sure if Northwind was posthumous or if it was just written right before, or if it was released right after or right before he died, but it feels like a gift to have that book be sort of new right now after we've lost him. But I was just going to say, I haven't read Northwind, but I think it has maybe the most beautiful cover of any Gary Paulsent book I've ever seen. I think the cover is really evocative, and it makes me curious about about the book. Every time I see it, I think, oh, I need to read that one. I wonder, it makes me wonder about it, which I love. But it's exciting it's sad and wonderful to be able to read another Gary Paulsent book, because it is the last one. But what a gift he was to young readers for so many decades.
Sorry, completely agree. And the cover invited me in too. I mean, I told the story at the beginning, but it just has this magical, authentic pull. And I think I heard you use the word curious. There's actually a ton about the book I'm curious about. I'd love to talk to you about some of the symbols throughout as well after you read it.
Sounds good. Well, you didn't want to give a lot of spoilers away while sharing Northwind, but I need to let our 3.5 viewers know that I'm about to spoil everything when it comes to my book talk. I'm going to share it all. So, and that's because—
Is this really happening?
It really is. I'm spoiling the whole thing. But I hope it'll be good. I hope it'll be in a good way. The reason is because I don't want to oversimplify the book talk or not really convey how powerful a book I think this is, which I think is hard to do without walking you through it, because it's a picture book, which I haven't shared in a while. I was looking through our archive, which I know you will share later. And I was realizing I haven't shared a lot of picture books this year. So I thought, I need to up my picture book game. So it's a picture book, but also it's a wordless picture book. It's a book without any words in it, which sometimes, I feel like can be so powerful. I feel like sometimes those books are just so powerful. And they really invite interesting conversations with kids. So the one I want to share, I wonder if you have seen it yet, Brad, because I was thinking about you a little bit and your read alouds. It's called I Forgive Alex. a simple story about understanding. It's by Kerascoët, who is the author and the illustrator. And some of my viewers may recognize that author illustrator from books like I Walk with Vanessa or Malala's Magic Pencil. Kerascoët has either been the illustrator or the author illustrator on a number of really big picture books over the last few years. But I'm going to point out the cover first here. You know how, have you ever known people who read the end of the book before they read the beginning, or once they've opened a book, they sort of fast forward to the end? Have you ever known people who do that?
No, I can't fathom doing that, but go ahead.
There are people, and I point that out because the cover here image is sort of a hint. It's a foreshadowing of the end of the book. So as you know, if I were doing this as a read aloud with kids, I might say, look at the title and then look at this picture. What do you predict is going to happen? Because this cover sort of gives you a hint as to what's going to happen in the book. But I'm going to take off the dust jacket, as Mr. Shu would have us do. The cover is the same on the dust jacket as it is on the hard case or on the case cover. I want to show these beautiful end papers that are just all these gorgeous colors that sort of capture the watercolor design of the illustrations. But this book starts out on just an average day of school. And we really don't know any of the characters' names because, again, it's a wordless picture book. But we do end up recognizing from the title and then what happens in the book that this is Alex right here, our friend with the ball. And I would point that out to kids because you want to kind of keep an eye on Alex throughout the book. There's lots of kids on all the pages, and it's almost like a Where's Waldo experience. Where's Alex and what's happening to Alex, right? So as our story starts out, we've got kids just waiting for the school bell to ring to go inside, right? Alex is playing with their buddies. And then off to the side, here's a group of kids that doesn't include Alex. And can you kind of see what's happening there, Brad? What do you see there? What's happening in that scene from your perspective?
Looks like some writing is being distributed. It looks like this other character is drawing a crowd as well.
Yes. Okay. So you're there. That's great. This particular kiddo is sharing something for sure. And maybe it's writing, or on this page, we get kind of a big insight into what it might be. Can you tell what that is?
Fun. Pictures.
Yes. Okay. So this kiddo has drawn some artwork, really proud of it, sharing it. Meanwhile, we got Alex over here who's playing ball with some buddies. And then something happens, as often happens while we're on the playground.
I saw some puddles. I saw puddles on
Oh, goodness. Pages. We're starting to get worried, aren't we? Right?
This can't be good.
So, scene by scene, there goes that ball. Boom. Boom. Oof. Look at those puddles that you predicted. And then look what's happened here.
Oof.
Okay,
I don't know if Jen, I don't know if I forgive Alex.
Well, you're not alone, because here's what happens, right? All of the kiddos are sort of crowded around to see the disaster. Where's Alex? He is way over there. Alex looks mortified, but can you notice what's already happening on some of his friends' faces?
Yes.
Some of them already look pretty grumpy, don't they?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Different ranges of emotions or different intensity levels.
Indeed. And that's such a good point, because if I were doing this with kids, we would spend a lot of time on this page, because look at what's the emotion that's being displayed right there. You know, and it's what a great opportunity to chat with kids about, like, how is this kiddo feeling? Have you ever felt that way? What are the things that have made you feel this way? But then let's find Alex. Can we find Alex on this page over here? How do we think Alex is feeling? And I love the detail here on Alex's face. Look at those little pink cheeks on him, right? That little change in the illustration where his face has gone red helps us understand how he feels, right? Well, then this is where things start to really take a turn, because if we look at, and I'm really not going to read the whole thing, But if we look at, as the bell rings, teacher comes out to call everybody, where is Alex? He's being left behind, right? And we see Alex then bearing the consequences of what happened all day long. From lunchtime, where people won't come sit with him anymore at lunch, etc., to back out on the playground where he tries to play with folks and nobody wants to play with him anymore. They may have forgotten what happened, but they know they're not supposed to be playing with Alex until finally, and we can remember back to our cover, something important happens. And we have forgiveness from the beginning incident, and how that conversation we could have with kids right then being all about how feelings can feel really intense, but it's important for us to try to work through those feelings and think about how the event might have felt from the perspective of the other person, etc. And this book, I Forgive Alex, it does it in such a powerful way because it doesn't tell you what you should feel. It doesn't tell you what emotions the kids are feeling. It really leaves it open for the kiddos to have those conversations and to think deeply about those incidences, how to navigate their own feelings, and how to also think empathetically towards other people who may be involved in something in which feelings were hurt, but their feelings are more complicated than you might initially interpret. So it's I Forgive Alex, a simple story about understanding. It's by Kerascoët. There's the author and illustrator right there. And I think you can read it right now.
Wonderful, Jen. That book is ripe for conversation and listening and learning. Here's what's on the tip of my tongue that I just can't hold back, that I would love to talk to a group of educators or kids about. Like, a lot of times what I see is a couple things. Sometimes kids don't even know what they've done. Like a ball might go bounce or hit someone in the face. They don't even know that happened.
Right.
That's one thing. The other thing is, you see them making questionable decisions. Like, they might not know that chucking a football as hard as they can into a crowd, they maybe can't connect the dots that it's going to break someone's glasses. But we want them to be able to start seeing, like, well, because you made that choice, even though it was a mistake, like, that's something that hurts. And there's so many nuances to that story that I could just see a class going back to that book and loving it, but also learning from it again and again.
Yes, I agree. I don't know if it was the second or third time I went through it, but in a later reading of it, I started to think about all those kids who probably didn't see exactly what happened at the beginning of the book, but still went along with ignoring Alex, that still went along with shunning him, as a result of it, and probably weren't even involved, and so, like, talking to kids, maybe even a little older, about how we sort of go along and people become enemies, and maybe we don't even know why, but we go along with some of that, how we can pile on the hurt. There was already hurt feelings, but then our actions can pile on some more. As you said, I feel like this is a book teachers and classroom teachers and librarians and parents could go back to over and over with their kids. But I would also add it maybe to a list of my beginning of the year books with kiddos to start developing that culture of thinking about other people's feelings and what we do when feelings get hurt and how we handle that.
Yeah, this is more of an emerging thought or feeling, so it's really unpolished, and I might regret even pondering but I appreciated how the non-traditional interest that the one kiddo had, drawing, how that person it appeared to have, they had some social credibility.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a solo thing. I'm not sure why I like that. I don't know, there's something there that I liked or that I want to think about more.
I love that you're bringing that up, because I do think it's a common trope that creative kids, whether we're talking about visual artists or kids who like to perform in the plays, the drama kids or musicians, that kind of thing, creative kids in books are not always, often presented as the victims of bullying or of being sort of outliers, or isolated from the popular crowd. And so you're right. I think there's something to the fact that you've got Alex, who's the athlete, and he's got a crowd, or they have a crowd of friends that they play with, but the creative artist student also has a crowd, a community that they play with. So really interesting.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. Thank you. You mentioned the archives
Yes.
earlier. So folks are looking to go and just check out some other books. Jen and I have talked about a wide range of genres and formats. Definitely go to bit.ly/read_this_now.
Right
As
now,
in
folks.
right
That's
now.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you to our 3.5 viewers. We really appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Until then, happy reading, folks.